Today we are going to talk about the state of access. I have recently been to virtually in both cases, to the Microsoft MVP Summit, where we got updates from the Access team, and then also to Access DevCon, which is a virtual paid conference put on by Carl Donnerbauer and a few other very kind gentlemen organized. It's a wonderful conference. So if you went to that, you probably have seen most of these things, but if you missed that, you can get some updates here today. And I will say that the state of access is that it is alive. It is being worked on. Just last week, I was at a conference or a networking event, and someone else in the IT field, I think he was in networking, said, "You program in Access? Do people still use that?" Well, yes, they do. And Microsoft is still developing it. So I do have today's presentation available. Let's see here. Put it in the chat. You can download it in the file section here. If you want to download and follow along or get the links that I will show at the end or whatever, feel free to do that. So there are two new items that have recently been added to the Microsoft 365 roadmap. We're going to talk a little bit about that and indeed view kind of a show and tell that the Microsoft Access team did on doing those things. So notice they are to modernize Access forms and reports to work well on large format monitors. Woohoo! And this is supposed to start coming out in July. And also a Access or a Zoom slider to magnify Microsoft Access. And what they're talking about here, if you've used the other Office applications, they would be things like down in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen where you can click the little zoom slider bar and, your Excel worksheet blows up and you can see better. Same kind of thing for Access. And this is starting rollout in June. Very exciting. Then this one here has been on there for a while, already launched. These two are in developments here. And I will just caveat this by saying these are new items, and even the most recent two items added below this, the Monaco framework for SQL editor and some more improvements to the modern charts are currently only available for Access 365 only. Now, I assume that some or all of these will end up being in the next perpetual version of Access whenever that comes out, but none of them, including those in the SQL editor or the pieces of the reporting or the charting rather, none of those got added to 2024. And the reason was they froze that perpetual release and what was included on that, like in the spring of last year. And those things weren't released until the fall. So that is why. This is a little bit about the Zoom slider. Details about what the Zoom slider is going to show. This is the verbiage that you get here. It's going to add a magnification slider that will allow magnification from 10%, that's really a reduction, to 500% in the lower right corner of the application. It'll look much like this, where you can click this slider or you can click the minus or the plus. There's also, like this is a screen print from Excel, a zoom button here on the toolbar or on the ribbon rather, where you can click that and then set various magnification levels. I don't think these two here are going to be there for Microsoft Access, at least according to what we're going to view here. And initially, they said when this rolls out, they plan to support this for forms in form view mode and to focus on the size of the controls on a form. So right now, what you can do as far as zooming in Access is, very limited. You can go in and you can, like, for example, in design mode, you can go into a text box on a property and you can right click in some cases and choose zoom, or you can do Shift F2 and you get a little zoom box. Let me maybe demo what that looks like. On a form, you can click in a text box here and do Shift F2, and that pops up, and you can see this a little bit bigger, right? You can even change the font, so you could select it and change the font to something even bigger, like 48 or something, and see that item even bigger, and then it actually saves, I think, your settings and what you've chosen. If you hit OK and you go in here and you do that Shift F2 again on another one, then we've still got the big font. So it's kind of nice, but it doesn't really do a lot. And then, of course, if you've got a report, you can take this report and you can view it in a preview mode, and then you do have a zoom for that level where you can make things bigger and see things better, but you can't change, you can't do this for a form and be editing and that kind of thing. They are going to change that. So we are going to watch a little bit of a video that is something that actually was just published today. So there are links to this video at the end of the presentation here. There's actually two nice videos that came from the Access DevCon that were the Microsoft Access team presenting some of these new features. So we are going to start with one here. This is zooming in forms.
All right, so I am on my dev machine here. Very simple form. It's got a header in it. Header has an image in it. It's just some text fields, a modern chart. I'm going to show you this other form after that has a bunch of other different controls. But what you're going to see down here is a zoom bar, and then we have zoom buttons up here as well. I am just going to click on this, and you'll see things get larger, and you'll see things get smaller. So what you might have noticed as things get larger, like this little selection up here is not increasing. So there's a lot of fit and finish issues that we need to figure out here. So that's an example of one. But by and large, it works.
Really? I'm going to skip to another piece where he shows a little bit more.
So this form is very sloppy. I just did this for test purposes, but we have labels and text fields and list boxes and combo boxes and option controls and check boxes and toggle buttons, attachments, modern charts, legacy charts, web browser control, and these will all respond to zoom, and they will all work when zoomed. So toggle button and option and the browser control will work. And there are some controls that aren't here. The tab control I largely have working. The navigation controls I largely have working, but you'll notice you don't see subforms here. That's something that I don't have working to the point where I feel comfortable demoing it. That's kind of next on my agenda of things to tackle. So that's about it for the zooming.
Okay, so I do see some comments about form design view. It sounded like their plan is to start with form view and then do report view and then do the design view after that. And they also talked about the possibility, and I'm not sure what order they'll do, in the forms that open in a mode that is like, what I think it's continuous, where you got like a grid going on. So I'm not sure in what order they'll, end up supporting these things, but I think at least for the first release of this, which is supposed to be in June, you can expect form view mode to work for this. And so, the really nice thing about this is if you've got somebody with maybe accessibility issues and they need to see something a little better, you have someone else that has, a little bit larger monitor and, it looks big on them. You can design it more for them. And then those that need to use it to see things properly can do so. Let's see, if you're zoomed, does it magnify from top left? I believe so, yes. There is the scroll bars do still work though, Neil? If you're zoomed in and tab to a control not visible, will it pan to show the active control? I'm guessing so because of the fact that as long as you have your bars set up, yeah, Carl, that's what they said. That's the order: form view, report view, data sheet view, and design view, but I'm not sure that they seemed set on that order. So Neil, as long as you have scroll bars enabled and they're working, I think that tabbing should probably work okay. And, Ben VBA to set it and detect it, I think that's probably going to come later. Just FYI, the way that they seem to be operating, Microsoft Access team, when they say that they are releasing something and, it's going to be a June timeframe, they'll release what they think is ready. Then they won't necessarily add further enhancements to what they consider that same feature to the roadmap as separate items. So you might expect, as long as you have 365, for these other pieces of zooming, like the report view or the data sheet view, to come later just in normal updates, but not really to be highlighted as anything in particular. Okay, let's go on to the next one. The second one on the roadmap, and this one was for July, is to modernize Access forms and reports to work well on large format monitors. And if you click on that on the roadmap, it indicates that it's going to remove the 22-inch size limit and modernize the forms and reports so they work well on larger monitors and provide responsive behavior for different form factors. So there is the question here about backward compatibility. Will older versions of Access be able to open a form or do anything with a form that is designed to be larger than 22 inches? Likely what is going to happen is that they will just detect that and not open it in older versions of Access. And in order to not break the VBA, etc., they're likely to have new properties for the TWIP type properties of forms, like, for example, left, top, width, height, like a large left or something like that. So different properties. They said they're going to try to make it as transparent to us as possible, but I think it's going to have to be new ones because they don't want to break the old ones. So let's take another look at that same YouTube that Carl posted this morning, and we're going to go to a different spot in that.
Very quick demo. So this is the just one of the forms in the students database. Normally it just shows these controls, but I've just made some copies of these controls and put them far away. So in fact, if I make this really big, you can see that they extend past the edge of my large monitor here. And if you go into design view and look at where these controls are, this guy, for example, is, I don't know if you can see this, but that says 23 inches. And the form itself, is now 31.5 inches to support that. So the goal here is to make this as transparent as possible. It will currently, the VBA properties for left, top, width, height can't, they're in TWIPs and they're only 16-bit values, so they won't be able to support. So we'll need new properties to give you the left position when the control is outside the prior range. But to the extent possible, we want to make this transparent, just that you'll be able to make much larger forms. What I was playing with here, and I didn't get to the point of making this completely work, is the idea that, for example, you might want to have a single form that sort of does paging by just having different areas on the form that you then scroll around, which might be faster than, say, using, swapping out a subform, and might be more flexible than using a tab control with different pages on it, for example.
All right. Next, we're going to talk about modern chart improvements. And again, these are things that have been delivered since the original rollout of modern chart improvements back in last fall. There are several things that the Access team has either rolled out or, well, I think in all these cases, they've already rolled these things out. There is a brand new chart type called, I believe, Perito, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It's shown here on the right. It's basically a bar chart that displays in descending order. So it's sorted in order of, like the most to the least to show the biggest factor in a data set. And then that there's also a line that is part of it, which is over here, that represents the cumulative total percentage. So it is used in Pareto. Okay, I'll believe you, Dwayne. Thank you for that. It's named after some Italian guy who, was an economist, I think, if I recall right. There's also been improvements, and I will say that a lot of these improvements are things that Colin suggested, and he's been quite instrumental in providing feedback to the Access team on modern charts. And I do actually have a link to his article on modern charts code, which is what a lot of this VBA support here talked about is, at the end of the presentation here. So you can take a look at that as well. They've done improvements in grid lines, added different grid line types and colors, improved the contrast between those different types. They've added a sort order and made that work. And in particular, it's helpful for different chart types like, I think it's called the funnel, where, it really should be either the top down or the bottom up kind of sort. It makes no sense to have it look like just a hodgepodge. It needs to have a sort order. And then they've added a lot more VBA support. There were some VBA properties that were a part of the initial release, but since they have added chart type, grid line type and color, sort order, line weight, marker points, etc., data label, display format and position, dash type, things about the display box whisker data points or mean markers, the Pareto, who knows? Line color, word cloud shapes, and the orientation for the word cloud. It's also kind of interesting that if you try to open a modern chart and use the VBA methods in a non-365 version right now, you will get a runtime error if you try to use those VBA methods. But because modern charts itself were supported in some of the other versions, like definitely it's in 2024, or it may have been in 2021 as well. I don't recall. But wanted to see if I could show you what that looked like. Display the whole darn screen here, but oh, it's not in this one. It's here. Oh, here we go. So you get a friendly runtime error message, at least. The property is a new chart property that's not supported in this version of Access. Please update your VBA and remove this property if you want your VBA to run successfully in the version. I thought that was kind of nice. Ben does have a poll going here. If you're using modern charts, I am starting to use them as I do new development and want a chart in there. But I will be honest, Ben, for the most part, I tend to dump results to Excel and let them do their own charts, or have a template that has a chart and then I just update it. That's what I'm doing myself. But Colin has some great samples and actually a great tool where you can play around with programmatically and interactively within Access, changing some things. So I can see how you might want to do that. I think that's a great option for some applications. There's also been a recent implementation of the practice of blogging in the tech community. There's been 2 recent blogs about updates. And so there are a couple, I think there's one for 2501, and then there's a combined blog post for 2502 and 3. But these are a couple of modern chart improvements that they list in that. And I did mention that series sorting and setting some new properties. They just list a few of them here, but you can also reference that blog post. And now moving on to Monaco SQL Editor, there has also been some improvements to that. I think that I am probably not the only one that is of the opinion that when it was first released, it was cool, but it was lacking in a lot of ways. And you can see here, I've actually got 2 pages on improvements they've already done, and then we're going to talk about what they still are working on with that. A lot of these are bug fixes, but not necessarily all of them. These are all the 2501 ones. And again, Colin was instrumental in pointing these out to them and getting them to fix it. Then in 2502, they did a couple others about saving, and 2503, 3 more. One of the big ones here in my mind is the F1, where it would bring up help based on the current selection. Going on to the new improvements. So should be coming soon for the editor, and some of these are huge in my mind. A much faster loading time. There's going to be the concept of just loading the web browser that it needs to be running in the background for the Monaco SQL Editor one time instead of each open. And then to make it even better, if you open Access and don't go into the query designer right away, or rather the SQL Editor right away, it will actually spend idle time opening that web browser backend that it needs, so it will look instantaneous. And then the next thing is to be able to partially execute a query. So you can select text, and if you have used SSMS, SQL Server Management Studio, and worked in SQL, you're all familiar with doing that. Just be careful what you select, because if you select delete all without that where clause, it's going to delete everything. So be careful, but this is hugely powerful when you're debugging, where you can have your query and gradually execute parts of it. And then they are implementing a pretty format, a shortcut key, Control K, to prettily format SQL, and this uses an open source SQL formatter library. And I don't recall that the Access team ever said, but this part of the video that we're going to watch here definitely shows what appears to be saved SQL format. So I don't know if that's only if it's in pretty format. We don't have this yet. This is just still to come. But if it saves anything that you put, I think that would be super cool. So let's take a look at that. Okay, this is at 5:29.
Appealing. The next update we did was instantly launching the Monaco editor. Right now the database has been open for more than 2 to 3 seconds, which means like the Monaco editor has been loaded already in the background. So if we try to open the query, it would launch instantaneously. As you can see, the new formatting, it's already been applied. Earlier, all these parameters would have been appearing next to the select statement in a single line. Right now, all these are separated by a new line. The other thing I wanted to show was running the selected SQL text. Anywhere in the Monaco editor, you could select a SQL text and it would run it. For example, in this union query, I just select the first part of the union query and run it. It would run only that part, ID, field 1, field 2, which was the select statement provided in the first part. I could also run a query in the comment section. This is like just selecting all from a random other table. So it would run from the select star from all table, which is having ID and field name. And if you go back to editor, you would have the same content preserved here. And you could quickly write any queries on the go and run it. For example, I'm writing an expression here. It's doing select expression 10 into 50. I can run this and you would get a result. As far as the formatting is concerned, I want to show this example. I'm going to paste this clumped up large SQL query into the editor. And it would be not visually appealing. So I have a hooked up Control K keyboard to quickly format using the SQL formatter library. So after you paste a query and you want to see the query in a formatted way, you press Control K and it will format instantaneously. As you can see, that was a large clumped up query and it would usually, it will appear beautifully in SQL formatted way. We are going to introduce in the future is source control management. Basically, we had a earlier old visual source safe model where it was implemented as an add-in model where the visual source safe, which is currently deprecated, was used, and that was used for source control. We are going to bring the same model but with GitHub integration. So currently this is in early design phase. So you would have the same.
I do provide you with the links, and I thank you. It was great timing on his part to publish those this morning just in time for this presentation. So I appreciate that. So I stopped the presentation there. There is a few more things that they talked about at DevCon and that have been talked about coming up. Here are the links. The roadmap, the breaking access news. This is the first, or really the second video that we were looking at. Nope, this is the first video we're looking at. It has zooming and extending form sizes in it. This is some information about the Zoom box as it exists in Microsoft Access, which is very limited. This one is the second video that has it has code signing in it. It's got Monaco SQL editor changes. It's got information about source control, which they're thinking about doing. I think they said at some point this year, by end of year, and more improvements to charts. But we talked about charts and Monaco. So signing and SCC or source control add-in, we did not talk about today in this presentation. Here's the two links to the blog posts about the bug fixes. And finally, here's a great article of Collins that is about those SQL editors improvements that came up. I don't think I posted your Monaco reports one, Colin. If you want to put a link to that in the chat, you're welcome to. He gave a great presentation on using some of those new charting VBA properties and how to go about doing that.
I'll do that in a minute. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So the other things that the Access team is talking about, new Outlook, what to do about that. And the impression that I've gotten from them is they're taking the kind of position that they hope to offer the same things that they currently offer as far as interface with Outlook, like send object and that kind of thing, send email. But right now they're waiting, they and other parts of the Office team are waiting on the Outlook team to give them the correct new technology to use for that. And so they really do not seem to be actively addressing it, but instead pressuring the Outlook team to provide a replacement of some kind or a direction other than the object Outlook model. So, and there are some great articles on AccessForever.org has a great one on all of the different options that people are coming up with for getting around and using something else to interface with Outlook or send email or do those kinds of things, calendar items. I have a Graph API option that I put on GitHub. That's one of those mentioned. Other than that, yeah, code signing and source code control management, those are the other biggies. So lots going on. It's really exciting. I think I see feedback here in the chat about people really liking the new things that we were talking about here as far as the improvements to the SQL editor. These are some biggies in my opinion too. It'll really make things useful. Any other questions, comments from people as to what they're most excited about, other than just the fact that Access is alive and being worked on?
Maria, one of the things that I find quite exciting is the idea of being able to sign your databases again, sign your projects again. Which is, I know Colin's done a great deal of work on that. So
they've had that for a while.
Sorry?
They've had that for 2 years at least, end of 2022.
They've been able to sign since 2022?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, the only thing that they're introducing with that is to be able to do that from the command line as a switch, like if you had a bunch of databases.
Yeah, I know, yeah. That's a surprise to me. I thought that the signature stuff was all recently being tested and worked on.
2 years ago.
And we're talking for ActDBs here. We're not talking for, obviously, MDBs who've had it all the way through.
No, we're talking for ActDBs.
And DEs.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now there's some caveats. If you sign it and you go in and you use certain things, like you add a where to a query, or update the query or something like that, or you use some kind of a make table query, then you break that signature.
That's only if you save that, Maria. It's only if you save queries that are changed, which makes sense. That's always been the case, by the way.
Yep.
True, but if the certificate store is actually available to access, it will immediately reapply the certificate anyway.
What now? So it never used to.
Yep. So they added that. They added that about January 2023. So that was a request that if you had your token plugged in, or if you still had the old system of having it on the hard drive, then it would continue to work. So basically, it invalidates the certificate, it then revalidates it immediately.
but only if you're in a position, like if your access is...
If you're the developer, yeah. If you're, yeah. So if an end user has the ability to change the code, which of course you wouldn't ideally want, but if they do have the ability, they would not be able to reapply the certificate because they don't have the certificate.
Adrian, Carl did post a link to the Access Forever article where we announced that several years back. So take a look. Neil, you have your hand up.
Yeah. Is anyone else as staggered as I am that they're proposing to put new properties for left and top width and height of controls and forms?
What else would you do, Neil?
Well, because VBA casts int to a long automatically, I just make them all longs. New code would work. Old code would no longer overflow. End of story. And
I don't know logistically how they could do that because they can't update the other code bases.
So we've got to update all ours instead, have we?
But, well, it's...
sorry, and no, it's not even up there. I've got to rewrite them all.
But do we need...
Because all of a sudden, I've got code that uses left and top to do things to a form, and it's no longer going to do that because I've got to use large left.
No, it will still do that. It's just if you can't probably do that
on large
well
form.
I'm guessing that those will still work, but if you try to use a value with those that's bigger than the current TWIP size, then you can't do that. You'll get a runtime error or something. You need to use the other value. That's what I'm guessing. I'm guessing the others will still work for the larger ones.
So if you
won't be able to
left large,
put a value that's greater than the TWIPs in.
If you were to put a left large value in, which is within the range of the left integer range, does it update left accordingly and then not update it if it would overflow it?
Yeah, I mean, that's totally, I don't know the answer to that. Ben, do you have a comment about this topic here? Or
Neil, I think you're speculating about stuff that we don't have the answers to.
No, we don't know
and
yet.
I don't think you should be. I don't think it's helpful at all. I don't think you should assume what you're assuming is going to happen.
Okay, fair enough.
Did you say Ben or Neil?
Yeah, Ben is next.
I meant to say Neil, sorry.
Right. Yeah, so you did say Neil, and I accept what you said.
I asked Ben because he has his hand up, I asked if he had a comment about Neil's, and in which case I wanted him to go ahead and jump in now, but it looks like we're winding down on that topic, so you can go ahead regardless, Ben.
Okay, so I saw a message in the last few weeks that said that Access wasn't on the roadmap. Did you guys see that? You know what I'm talking about? That Access wasn't on the future roadmap.
I think that there was something like that for a while, but they got that fixed.
Okay, so that was a mistake?
That was a mistake.
Okay.
No, it's just because the roadmap's written by people that don't know Access exists.
Yeah.
Well,
are you expecting that?
The roadmap is the Access team have a responsibility to update the roadmap as and when they've got something to do. But there are limitations on what they can, what they're allowed to publish.
Yes, very much so. It has to meet certain criteria. And that is one of the reasons that things like continued improvements to the Monaco SQL editor will not be hitting the roadmap because they're more extensions of an existing feature at this point rather than a new feature. So that's one of the things that the criteria or whatever to get on there. It has to also be within a certain time frame. Can't be like 2 years out or anything like that. It has to be 6 months, fairly short term.
Yeah, my understanding was the definition was that they can reasonably be sure that they'll hit that goal. So it's going to be
I'm not sure. At one point, George, the product manager for Access, didn't want to put something on there unless he was sure because he didn't want to keep missing it. But I'm not sure that that's necessarily in.
I think, sorry, just if I can come back in, I did write to the product manager and try to persuade her that the improvements to Monaco were big enough to put on the roadmap, and she disagreed, which is why they're not going on there. But she said that not only do they need to be 90% or very confident that items will go on there, they need to be significant, and it must be within the next 3 or maximum 4 months. So there's all sorts, and there was a lot more restrictions that I can't go into. So there are very definite guidelines that they have to adhere to. And if they don't have anything that fits those criteria, then the roadmap is empty. And previously, when it was empty, that caused Access to drop off the combo where you could even choose it, which was a mistake.
Sounds like we've got the 2 on there for this summer, which is really exciting. That's one of the reasons I wanted to highlight this today. Is a lot of times I like to highlight new features right after they come out so that I can demo them, because I have the beta version. So I'm one of the first that gets it. But we are going to take a break over the summer. There will be a May session. Adrian, no pressure. Did you make a decision you would be ready for May or no?
I probably will. I wanted to speak to you about it.
Okay.
But okay, I'm on the spot now. I will say, what we're talking at least 4 weeks away, yeah?
Yeah, it's the very end of May, so.
In May, yeah. Go for it then. I'll go for that.
Okay. So in May, we are going to meet at the end of May, the 4th Tuesday of May. And Adrian, you're going to tell them a little bit, Active Directory.
At the moment, I've only got as far as working with ordinary Active Directory grouping, but it's about security and using the Active Directory situation that you're in to determine what things you have access to. So if whatever I'm logged in as, it will check which groups I'm in, and the designer of the project can say, well, this group allows access to such and such. That's
perfect. Sounds very interesting. That'll be our May topic, and then we will break and not get together for lunchtime in either June or July, and then we'll resume again at the last Tuesday. It's last Tuesday, not 4th Tuesday. Sorry, last Tuesday of August. And I don't know the topic yet, but go ahead, Colin.
Just to say that it was going to happen in May, but it's been delayed. In July, I'm going to be hopefully doing a presentation for Access Europe on large monitor support and responsive forms. So by then,
I believe earlier.
Yeah, I'm hoping I will see them earlier. If not, I will bluff my way through as I normally do.
Well, I know how it is to schedule we're going to have this. I think I did that with Modern Charts or something, and then they delayed, and I'm like, yeah, we're not going to have that this meeting. So.
Yeah, and I'm very grateful to Carl for stepping in to do next month's presentation for Access Europe, beginning of May. If there's time, can he talk about that? And also I see is here Domenico Ruggieri, who's going to be doing the June talk for Access Europe. And there he is up in the space station, as you can see.
Perhaps Mr. Ruggiero might want to nip in quickly while we're waiting for Carl.
Well, thank you, sir. Good suggestion, and I'm happy to do so. New to the user group community here, and I'm honored to be able to present in the month of June. And I will be talking about kind of the Office suite as a whole, whereas Access and SQL Server serve as our data repositories, and we love our user interface forms. We've talked about charts and things like that here. A lot of my work over the years has been about getting the entire suite of applications, when needed, to work together, because each of them do have their strong suites. And so I'll be talking about some of the algorithms that I use to draw information out of Access, out of SQL Server, and then get it over, let's say, to Excel. Sometimes you have to get it over to PowerPoint. Sometimes you're generating a Word document. A lot of times it's just about meeting the clients where they are, and that's the outputs, the products that they're expecting. And so we don't want to limit ourselves in our automation capabilities, especially if we love using Access, to be able to still get them the products that they need. So I'm going to be delighted to share with you a couple case examples, one that deals with a cost management report, and also how I get, I heard some mention of Outlook earlier today. There's those cost management reports that are in Excel are getting bundled together for the project managers in an Outlook email. And the work that's done here saved one guy probably his marriage, if I could go so far as to say that, because he was spending one night a week working at the office and sleeping at a cot in his office. So there was a huge time savings. And so I'll be going through a lot of those different algorithms and capabilities. And again, I'd be delighted to share that all with you in June.
Great. Can I just come back in and say, Carl, you may have noticed I'm actually struggling. My voice is going. Carl has got even less voice, apparently. He's going to be doing a presentation on Office updates and the havoc that they can, and Windows updates, and the havoc that they can sometimes do, and how to minimize the issues that you get with updates, or can get with updates, and also how to help get those dealt with promptly. I hope that's a good enough summary. But anyway, because use your high quality and very, very well researched presentation. Thank you.
So while we have other time, let me invite you. I don't know if you're a fan of AccessForever.org, but if you have not yet seen the new showcase section, it is active now. You can take a look. We now have 2 applications showcased, and we have a lineup of people that have applied. So the plan is to kind of post one about every month. So you should be able to watch for those. And then there's a spot at the bottom of the most recent one where you can click a link and apply to get your application showcased. And what we're looking for there is, what are all the different capabilities of Access? Did you know you could do this in Access? That kind of thing. The most recent one happens to be a actual commercial application using Microsoft Access. Believe it or not, people do deploy things commercially with Microsoft Access. And, some of the other things, like the last one was about a hybrid application that used SharePoint and Power Apps as well as Access for a charity. So we hope to see a wide breadth of different items or different ways to use Access on that. So take a look. George, you have something else.
Well, I was just going to say, since we introduced other meetings, I'll take a minute to talk about my meeting Thursday night. Yeah. So over the years, I've been interested in a lot of different things, including, Access web apps when they were a thing. But recently, I had a chance to work on the team that built the Northwind templates, the new templates. And one of our unspoken goals when we did that was that we would encourage other people to try to extend or improve those templates in some way. For example, using a SQL Server backend as a way to just demonstrate the flexibility and usage of Access. So I set myself the goal of rebuilding Northwind developers in Power Apps. And I'm going to give a progress report tomorrow night.
Awesome. So George is talking about the Pacific user group.
Yep.
Access user group. I'm going to post the link here. And Colin was talking about the Europe group. Colin's group meets the same time frame as this group meets. So if it's good for you to attend here, it's probably good for you to attend Colin's meeting. It, of course, is a different time in Europe. So he thinks of it as a different time than lunchtime, but it's the same time frame, just I think on a Wednesday, the first Wednesday of each month. George's group, however, is later. It's in the evening Pacific time. So depending upon where you're at, that may or may not work for you. I know those people in Australia and stuff like that better, but yeah. And then you can always catch recordings on our YouTube channel too. So
Don't even talk about the Australian group, which
well, they have a new one. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I haven't had time to listen to any of their things or watched it very closely. Sorry.
Kent is very low key, so he's not as apt to advertise.
Well, I don't know where he's advertising. It might not be in some of the same.
That was the implication of not as apt to advertise. He doesn't.
So we have an extra 4 minutes. Who has heard of an interesting topic they would like to be focused on in a fall session? I know Crystal posted some kind of thing early on and it flew by, so I didn't pay good attention as something she was working on recently. Was that your Word stuff that you were talking to me about?
No, but I wrote it because I was trying to figure out where all the Word code is. Okay, so I wrote another documenter for VBA. This one works inside the database and it documents all the parameters as well as the module and procedure names, and it gets all the data types. And I actually wrote this documenter so I could get a better handle on where all my word code is. But it runs in Access, and you can run it on any database. And I'm really, really pleased with it. I've spent a week writing it, and now it finally gets all the data, puts them into the tables and Access, and I'm getting ready to make some reports. And I have a couple queries. It's giving me what I need to get a handle on where all my code is and what it's doing. So
Okay.
I can share that if other people would be interested.
Anybody else have anything? Because I need a few sessions for the fall. So, and it doesn't have to be something you're willing to be presenting. It could also just be a topic you're interested in, and then I can locate somebody who's willing to talk about that. So don't feel like you're necessarily volunteering yourself to talk. I guess I'm interested in hearing what else haven't we covered recently that you'd be interested in hearing talked about further.
If there's enough interest, I could redo the modern charts presentation from DevCon at an autumn meeting. But again, it depends how many people are going to use it. Some people say they never do charting in Access. Other people use it a lot and might benefit. I don't know.
So, Colin, in my opinion, what you showed at DevCon, and I hope you're not offended by this, it was really cool and very appropriate for developers, but it was so intensive content-wise that it was more about the breadth of things. What I would love to see in a presentation is more for the super user to show how you could make charts more interactive by using the properties in some way. So, things like changing what the focus was of a chart from one data type to another data type or something like that. If that were something that were possible. Do you understand what I'm getting at?
Not really. Let's chat about that.
Sure.
After the meeting.
Sure.
Or later or whatever.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, I was conscious of trying to cram too much into that session, which is a habit I do have, I'm afraid.
No, that's all right. And your tool allows you to explore everything, but I agree, Carl. Maybe 10% of what you showed, but in a more detailed and slower way with more actual impact for the business user. That's what I'm thinking about. So I'll see if I can give you some specific examples to get you on the right train, and then we can have all summer for you to think about it in your spare time.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we are at 1 o'clock, and it looks like we ran out of material early today, even though we had lots of things to demo that Access was alive. And please do check out the other links, including the whole videos. It may be in high definition mode, so you can see them better. that Carl posted this morning, and it was great spending a little bit of time with you. James, you have something? Or you're clapping. Okay, I'm sorry. I thought your hand was raised. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you maybe in May.
Bye. Cheers. Bye now.
Thank you.
Okay.
Happy
Thank
summer.
you.
Happy-
Bye-bye.
Bye.